on time. You just had such a great topic about 1031 exchange. I don't even think you covered all the basics yet, including all the different types of exchange I just mentioned in your introduction. So maybe today you can give us different types of exchanges as a starting point, and then we can come back with questions. How's that?
Yeah, sure. So just a rehash of last week. We went over the 1031 exchange as much as we could have. And so everybody understands and we're on the same page. The 1031 exchange is only for investment property, but the percentages throughout the nation, particularly in the Bay Area, are quite alarming on how many properties do qualify for a 1031 exchange. There are different types of exchanges, like Coco mentioned, and I will go over all of them in the next 40 minutes and answer any questions that you have. I'm here to continuously educate investors and real estate professionals on the subject matter 1031. I got to tell you, the greatest wealth building tool that exists out there. Nothing exists where you can sell an asset that's amassed so much appreciation without having to pay a tremendous amount of taxes on the gains of that asset. But here's the good news. This code has been around for over 100 years, and it allows you to unload that asset for whatever reason no longer makes sense and reinvest into another piece of investment property that is supposed to be far superior to what you sold. That's why we do the 1031 exchange. So the first and most common type of 1031 exchange is the forward exchange. It's also called the delayed exchange. Some people call it the Starker exchange. Starker exchange, it's not even the exchange, it's just the name of a person. TJ Starker, he did timber exchanges back in the 70s, and he's the one responsible for really getting that 45 and 180 day time frames, because he did his exchange and it took him 5 years. And after many years of deliberation, the IRS came up with these time frames, which I really despise. But these are the time frames that we must follow. And in a forward exchange, it would work as I'm going to describe. You bought a property many years ago, or maybe not too many years ago, and maybe at first it was an investment property, maybe at first it was investment property, but the last use of the property was investment property. Now you're looking to sell that property. And so you are selling this investment property for whatever reason that has significant gains. And if you were to take the money and just call it a day, you'd be paying a lot of capital gains tax, depending upon where the property is located and depending upon where you live would determine exactly how much you would be paying in taxes. And I think even in some of the non-tax states, you're still not going to get out without paying in the mid-20s. But in places like California, you're probably paying in the mid-30s on every dollar of gain. But the way it would work is you would put that property on the market. Coco can help with that. Eventually, you would accept an offer. Then you would open up escrow. And then you would have to get me involved. Now, first off, I'd recommend that you contact me in advance to make sure the property qualifies for a 1031 exchange. And I would go through a series of questions, not many. And probably within minutes, I will determine if it does or it doesn't qualify for a 1031 exchange. And some are kind of gray, and it's truly up to you as the investor to determine how aggressive or how conservative you want to be with proceeding with the 1031 exchange. But I will help you make that decision. And if need be, I will get your tax advisor involved. But let's just say it's a regular rental. Let's call it a residential investment property, a single family home in the San Jose area that you just put on the market. You've owned it for many years. It's amassed all kinds of appreciation. It's been a rental. You accepted an offer. You opened up escrow. You called me in advance to make sure it qualified. And now you're calling me again saying, James, I'm in contract. What do I do next? Now, in order to get the 1031 exchange account set up for a forward, regular, delayed Starker exchange, I need a copy of the sales contract and preliminary title report. The reason why I need a copy of the sales contract is because we, the qualified intermediary, actually become the seller. Because if the seller is the seller, that means they touch money at the close. If you touch money, it's called constructive receipt, you will become a taxpayer. If you set up a 1031 exchange where we assign into the rights of the contract, set up a 1031 exchange in the name of the entity that is on title. That's why we need the preliminary title report to see who's on title, and put those papers in place and have them signed by the seller prior to the close of escrow. The 1031 exchange account that we set up will receive the proceeds. This is a regular forward exchange. From that close date, you will have 45 calendar days to let me know what you're going to buy in writing. And now many people say, well, Okay, I'll just give you a huge list. Can't do that. And many people say, well, here's the MLS list from yesterday. Can't do that either. You have to follow one of the three rules when identifying what you're going to purchase in a 1031 exchange. This is the most difficult part of a forward exchange. This is why people consider some of the other exchanges, which I will go over. Now, in a forward exchange from the close of escrow, you have 45 calendar days to let me know what you're going to buy, and you have to follow one of the three rules. The first rule is called the three property rule, and this is the most popular rule. This rule says within the 45-day window, you can identify to us in writing, and it has to be very specific. So if it's a condo, list the unit number. If it is a percentage that you're buying of the property, list the percentage you're buying. You cannot sway from what the exact address is or exact percentage of what you're going to acquire. So with the three property rule, you can identify up to three properties of any value. Now you can change this list as often as you want within the 45-day window, but come day 46, it can no longer be changed. So if something no longer works or you want to put something on to that list after day 46, it is too late. Can't be changed, can't add to it, can't subtract from it. It's done. So the three property rule is used for the person that's usually looking to buy one or two properties. But quite often when you're selling, in our example, in San Jose, and let's say it's being sold for $1.5 million, in a 1031 exchange, to pay zero in capital gains tax, you want to buy of equal or greater value to what you are selling. So let's not even look at closing costs. Let's just look at a $1.5 million sales price, and we're looking to buy another property for $1.5 million. Well, let's say we're tired of California. So a lot of our investors are. They're like, I can get better cash flow and better returns and less responsibilities, or whatever the reasons are, in a different state. I want to move everything to a non-state tax state, and I'm going to move there as well. I want to go from California to Tennessee, for example, or Texas, or Florida, or any state. When you do something like that, a lot of the time the property is a lot less than $1.5 million. You might want to buy multiple properties. If you are looking to diversify your real estate portfolio and buy a number of different properties that are of less value, you will use the second rule. The second rule is the 200% rule, and here's how it works. The sales price of the property in San Jose that was sold is $1.5 million. You get 200% of that number. Basically, it's real easy. 1.5 million times 2, you get $3 million, and that is the cap. What does that mean? That means you can identify as many properties as you want, as long as all the properties that you identify combined at the time of identification do not exceed $3 million. So this, in effect, if you were looking to buy smaller properties in a different area, you could identify $200,000 properties. You could identify 15 of them if you wanted. Or if they're of less value, even more. It just depends on what the strategy is. If you're looking to buy that one or two properties, it's more than likely going to be the three property rule. If you're looking to diversify and buy a lot of smaller properties, it's going to be the 200% rule. If you are a gambler, it will be the third rule. The third rule is the 95% exception. I got to tell you, in my 25-year career, I've seen this rule utilized about 9 different times out of the 57,000 exchanges I've been a part of. And this is the reason why. The 95% exception means you can identify as many properties as you want. No limit. So you're way over 3. And there is no limit on the value. Don't have to worry about the 200% rule. And when people hear that, they're like, well, let's just use that rule. Here is the catch. You have to close on 95% of the value of the properties combined that you identify. So if you don't close basically on every single property, the entire exchange will fail. This rule is seldomly used. And when I say 9, I mean after day 45, where they're still trying to get it done. If you get everything done within the 45-day window, one of the rules is going to work, no matter what. We can make it work. This is for properties that you have not closed on within the 45-day window. And this is where you're looking to identify properties and close them after day 45 when you can no longer change it. So I think the game plan is very easy. You determine upfront, it's time to sell. You talk to Coco to list the property. You call me up with Coco on the line to determine whether or not the property qualifies. List the property for sale, get in the contract. Before you list it for sale, one more thing, you know what you want to buy. Maybe not the exact property, but you have an idea. You have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C to make sure within that 45-day window, you do not fail your 1031 exchange. You are ready to strike quickly, you are ready to close quickly, and you are ready to go after properties without hesitation. Because if you are past day 45, yes, you have an additional 135 days to close on what you identify, but you can't change the list. So a regular forward exchange, identify within 45, close within 180. Use all the money in the 1031 exchange account and buy of equal or greater value. So if the property is sold for 1.5 million, and let's say hypothetically there was a loan on the property for 500,000, the loan gets paid off at the close of escrow, the $1 million goes into the 1031 exchange account. The target price is still $1.5 million. So you're going to spread the cash out among whatever number of properties you end up buying. Could be one, could be multiple. You could put the $1 million on all one property and get financing on the others. But you have to buy something for 1.5 million or greater to pay no tax. Now, if I bought San Jose for 200,000 and I'm selling it for 1.5, and I determine, you know what? I just want to buy $1.2 million worth of real estate, that still works. You will not pay taxes on the 800,000 or the $1 million part of the gain. You will only pay taxes on the difference that you did not hit, that 300,000. So if I sold for 1.5, originally bought the property for 200,000, we're not looking at depreciation or improvements to change that $200,000 number. We look at a $1.3 million gain. We buy something for $1.2 million, either one property or multiple properties. We don't want to buy any other properties. That is okay. You can do something like that. You will still get the benefit of the $1 million, not paying taxes on that portion of the gain, but the other $300,000 part of the gain, you'll pay taxes on that. And that's okay. So that is a regular forward exchange. Coco, you look like you're about to ask me a question.
Yeah, I have a question. I have two questions actually. So that actually explains a lot of questions before when people ask if I sell for 1.5 million, I have to buy something worth more than 1.5 million. That's not true because you're saying you can actually buy less than 1.5 million. You just have to pay taxes on the difference, right?
Yeah, and sometimes people strategically do that because they have other losses in their portfolio that could offset that portion of the gain. We don't know quite often as the real estate professional, unless we're doing their taxes, what other expenses or write-offs that they may have. So in a situation like that, I'll let them know, yes, it can be done. But talk to your tax advisor to see how much of that 300,000 you'd have to realize. You may have losses that'll offset the entire thing or a portion of it. I can't come up with those because I'm not their tax advisor, but I can recognize where there are situations where we need to talk to your tax advisor right away to find out how this is going to impact you.
Yeah,
Now,
so
I
that
saw,
actually it's good because you don't disqualify. Basically, you don't disqualify you if you don't buy more than what you sold for. You don't, yeah, you
and
don't.
I think that's a big misconception, Coco, and I'm glad you're bringing that up because a lot of people say, I didn't think I could even do it. I was told I couldn't do it. I read on Google it has to be equal or greater. First off, don't go to Google to get 1031 exchange answers. Go to James, that is me, because I'm on top of it. And a lot of the stuff on Google is outdated. So you don't want to bring something up. And I get that all the time. I read on Google. I found it on the internet. My friend told me, my neighbor told me, my neighbor should never give you advice. Only a 1031 exchange specialist should be giving you advice. Even your tax advisor may not be as in tune as someone like myself because this is all that we do. So I saw in the chat that somebody wanted to know what our fees are, and I think that's an important thing to bring up right now. So for a regular forward delayed Starker exchange, the fee is $1,000 for the $1.5 million property that was being sold and $250 for each property that was being acquired. So if it was just a one-to-one transaction, the total fee would be $1,250. By the way, those fees are not collected in advance. Those fees are taken out of the proceeds after the close. So once San Jose would close in this example, all proceeds would go into the 1031 exchange account. Then we would extract $1,000 fee. And then when the property that was going to be acquired was in contract and we were about to send out money to close, we would retain $250 to take care of the fee. And those fees are tax deductible. So the next type of exchange I wanted to mention would be the simultaneous exchange. This is very rare. And this is where the property that's being sold and the property that's being purchased closes on the same day. I don't recommend this type of exchange for one reason. If anything goes wrong with the property that's being sold and you're supposed to close on the property that's being acquired same day, well, then you're kind of in breach of contract right there, Coco, right? If I'm supposed to close on a specific day and the property I'm selling doesn't close and I don't have a contingent upon this property closing kind of contract, I don't know what would happen in a scenario like that, but that's the main reason why I don't like simultaneous transactions. But sometimes, they need to close on something right away, and there can be no forgiveness for tardiness, and they want to know how quickly can we close on the replacement property. And in scenarios like that, we will create all of our legal documents, assign into both contracts, create specific instructions that we will authorize the direct transfer of funds going from one escrow to the next. It actually creates a ton of more paperwork that we need to put together, and escrow needs to do things a little bit differently. So the fees are an additional $500 for a simultaneous transaction. Why pay the fee?
Why would they
Why
do
put yourself in that
simultaneous?
situation? It's just not really necessary more often than not. What were you going to say, Coco?
Why would they do simultaneous exchange?
You know, sometimes it might be necessary. They've extended the close of escrow on a property they've been in contract with, and things have been delayed. And the seller of the replacement property is tired of delays, and they just need to get it done on a specific date. In scenarios like that, yeah. Some people say, I don't want any delays. I don't want any risk. I want the property to be sold and go to the next property day one. I just don't recommend it going that quickly. If there is no other choice, absolutely, we can accommodate. That's not a problem. But simultaneous transactions are pretty rare. We may do one every month and a half. So that's like one out of every 600 to 1,000 deals. I don't recommend it. And sometimes it's a partial simultaneous transaction, meaning they're looking to buy multiple replacement properties, but they only need to close on one on the day that the escrow closes for the property that they're selling. And then the remainder of the proceeds will go into the 1031 exchange account. So there might just be one simultaneous transaction and another one that's going to be delayed. So it would be kind of a combo delayed simultaneous exchange when they're buying multiple properties and only one needs to close. So the third, yeah, go ahead, Coco.
So is it fair to say that when you have a simultaneous exchange, the money does not go to the 1031 account?
That's correct.
It goes
That's
directly
correct.
into the next escrow.
That is correct. So we will not hold the proceeds in a scenario like that. If it's partial, then we would hold only the portion that is not going towards the replacement property. But in the simultaneous transaction, we will not hold the proceeds. It will go from one escrow to the next.
And going back to the 95% rule that you mentioned earlier, what's the advantage of doing that? Because if you have that many properties identified, but you don't have that much gain, you don't really need to postpone your gain into that many properties. Why would people do that?
What about for the person that has a free and clear property with significant gains and want to leverage that property out to something that's more than 200% and more than 3 properties? Then the only choice would be the 95% exception.
It's if whatever, so the 1.5 million, you just made the example. So if the gain is 1.5 million, let's say, right? Okay, so if they got it for $1 and they sold for 1.5 million, so the gain is 1.5 million. If that's the case, why don't they just buy 2 or 3 properties worth more than 1.5 million? Why would they identify so many? That's my question.
Because they have a lot of equity in the account and they want to buy a lot of different properties. It really depends on the scenario, but it is for the person that is looking to buy multiple properties of greater value than 200%.
I guess my question is, the purpose of 1031 exchange is to delay the tax, right? Delay the capital gain tax. So if you use 2 or 3 properties can already delay that tax, they can buy other properties on the side as a transaction.
They want to use the equity from the exchange to buy the other properties.
They want to buy more. I got you. Okay, because they want to use that as down payment or whatever.
That's it. They will use it as down payment. And like I said, if it's $1.5 million sales price, no debt, and they're like, I love real estate. I want to buy here, 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 and here. And it's way more than 3 properties. And because I have 1.5 million, I'm going to leverage it at 33% kind of number. And I'm going to buy $4.5 million worth of real estate. And that's over 200%. And now their only option is the 95% exception.
Makes sense. Okay, now I understand. They want to use that money as down payment.
Yes.
because they don't want to come up with other down payments for
From
other
other means or
Mhm.
by equity lines or refinancing. They want to use it from the start.
Got it. Thank you.
So let's jump into reverse exchanges because it's another type of exchange that I think is very popular. I think we can all agree, and this is from a national standpoint, that the most difficult part of the 1031 exchange is finding replacement property within 45 days because there's no true break. I mean, yes, we had a big break in California last year because of the big storms. There was an extension, but in my 25-year career, I've seen 4 extensions in Northern California. So you can never predict when something like that is going to happen. You have to go in with the mindset that I have 45 days to find that replacement property. And here's the honest truth. People, I'd say about 50% or higher, people doing 1031 exchanges are looking for an ideal perfect property. And a perfect property would be in a perfect area. A perfect area usually doesn't have much inventory. So to rely on a month and a half to find that perfect property can be quite challenging. So the 45-day window is sometimes to people a death sentence and one of the most stressful parts of the exchange. Now, depending upon what you get into, and there are other passive types of investment properties like the Delaware Statutory Trust, the UPREIT program, triple net properties that you can get into, yes. But most investors have their own plans in place, and those plans may be to buy, and we talked about this last time, the dream home, the vacation home, the perfect multifamily home in an area that just doesn't have that much inventory, and they are so worried about the 45-day window. This is where the reverse exchange comes into play. And the reverse exchange is where you buy the replacement property first and sell the relinquished property second. And when people hear this, they are like, that solves my problem. I can find the perfect property. I'll have my tenant out, or they'll be close month to month or whatever. I'll find the perfect property. I'll buy it first. And all I have to do is sell my property in 180 days and my exchange will work. Let's do that. Okay. For the right client, this is the ideal solution. Here is the issue with the reverse exchange, in my honest opinion. You don't have the money from the relinquished property yet. How are you going to buy this property? This is the number one question that I give people the first time I talk to them when it comes to a reverse exchange. Maybe 30% of our clients, maybe less, I don't know. It seems like a high number just because we get a lot of calls where people say, oh, no problem. I have the cash to buy this property right now. Sir or ma'am, it's 2 million. Yeah, I have the cash. This happens. It's amazing, but I don't know how they get it. It could be equity lines of credit. It could be other margin that they can do off of other portfolios. They could have it under their mattress. I don't know. But if they have the cash to buy the property first, a reverse exchange is very simple. Here's how it works. They get into contract to buy the property first. First, have the consultation with me to make sure that it's going to work. Then go after the property. Coco will find that property for you. You'll get into contract and you'll open up escrow just like a regular forward 1031 exchange. At that point, we need to get involved. We will again need a copy of the contract so we can assign into the rights, and again need a copy of the title report because that's the escrow officer that we're going to be working with. That's the legal description of the property. That will show the current vesting on the property of the seller. And we will also, for a reverse exchange, require an open order form to be filled out that will go over all the details of both the sale and the purchase property. We will, at that point, create our legal documents, and there's a lot more for a reverse exchange, but not only create the legal documents, we will set up an LLC that will go on title to the property at the close. And no, I can't use your existing LLC. The reason why we set up an LLC is that you, as the person doing the 1031 exchange, cannot go on title to the property. So if it's your existing LLC, it's the same thing. You're the sole member or you're the member of that LLC. If it's an LLC that you have that you've never used, we can use that one. But more often than not, people don't have that just lying around. So we create the LLC. That LLC will go on title. We, IPX, we have a dummy name that will go as the sole member of that LLC temporarily at the close so that the client is not on title to both properties at the same time. So ABC LLC goes on title at the close of escrow. The single member of that LLC will be National Safe Harbor Exchanges. That's the name that we use every single time. And from that close date, all benefits, burdens, right, responsibility, operation will go to the client. For title purposes, the exchange company goes on title. From that close date, you will have 180 days to sell your relinquished property. In an all-cash purchase, and let's say you're buying something for $2 million, and you sold the San Jose property for $1.5 million, and San Jose is free and clear in this example, when you sell San Jose, the $1.5 million will go back to the client. 500,000 of their own money is in that transaction because they bought it for $2 million. And they will either take over the LLC or they will put it into the name of the entity that was selling the relinquished property. Now, a lot of people take over the LLC because in a reverse exchange, the LLC we set up goes on title. That's one closing and one transfer from the seller to the buyer, the LLC. And then if the client who's selling the relinquished property takes it over and doesn't put it in the LLC and puts it in their own name, they could be hit with dual transfer tax. So to avoid additional fees, a lot of the time the people take over the LLC that are doing the reverse exchange. And sometimes they just want it for the liability protection that it provides. So for an all cash reverse exchange, a reverse exchange is pretty easy. Now, if there is debt involved, this is where it becomes more challenging. If it is a residential property that's being purchased in the reverse exchange, residential conventional lenders typically, and this is like a very high percentage, like in the high 90s, do not lend to LLCs, especially when the sole member of that LLC is not the client, it's us. And so in a scenario like that, more often than not, the client's either going to have to get private money or hope that the seller will carry. Now, if they're going to get private money lenders usually charge between 2 to 3 points. And if they're getting a loan, I don't know, let's say 1.5 of the 2 million, well, that's $30,000 to $45,000 in fees that they could be paying on something like this. So you can see why when people hear about the reverse exchange, they can kind of say, well, I don't think I want to do that. A, I don't have the cash. B, the financing is a little bit too much. Or C, I just don't qualify to buy it first. And that's fine. But for a good percentage of clientele, the reverse exchange is the answer, especially if we look at the San Jose property. There could be a lender on that property that's willing to accept a loan in the middle of that transaction based on the sale of that San Jose property. So there are different lenders out there that do different things. I would recommend, if you don't have the cash to buy, talk to your lender. If not, I can give you names of private money lenders and see if it's a fit. We don't care what you do. We care that we give you the answers for any scenario that you present in front of us. So you have the all cash reverse exchange, you have the finance reverse exchange, and if you can't do either one, the reverse exchange won't work for you. Now, the reverse exchange fee is higher. So instead of the $1,000 for the sale, $250 for the purchase, the reverse exchange fee for residential property ranges between $6,000 to $7,000. For commercial property, it's based on sales price. And if it's commercial property, we will more than likely need a clean phase 1 environmental report to the property that we are going to be going on title to. So if the property is near a gas station, or a gas station used to be there, or a laundromat or something like that, then we definitely will require it. We will require it in a lot of scenarios, and sometimes we'll just do a Google Maps search to look at where the property is to determine whether or not that is needed. But for commercial property, more often than not, we will need a clean phase 1 before we go on title. And I would think as the buyer, they would want a clean phase 1 as well. So like I said, in the reverse exchange, you close first on the purchase, then you have 180 days to sell the relinquished property. And as long as you can make it happen within those timeframes, you have a successful 1031 exchange. Now, the final 1031 exchange type that I would like to review is the improvement exchange. The improvement exchange is very, very popular because in many scenarios, people find the perfect property, but for a lesser price. And I get the call where they say, James, I'm selling for 1.5. I know I'm supposed to buy for 1.5, but I got my eyes on this perfect property for what we want, and it's only 1.2, but it needs some work. And I want to know if I could use the 300,000 for improvements on the property. Now, here's the answer. Improvements do not qualify. Only real property qualifies in a 1031 exchange, but there is a way around it. Hence the improvement exchange, the build to suit exchange, same thing. It is where we, as the exchange company, like the reverse exchange, will set up an LLC that will go on title to that purchased property at the close of escrow. So the client is not on title. So they will identify the property that they are buying within the 45-day window, and they will identify the improvements. While the LLC is on title, the general contractor, the subcontractors, they will invoice us, and we will pay them for the improvements that they do. Now, when people hear this, they get really excited about it until I tell them you have to complete the improvements identified within the 180-day time frame. This is one of the biggest problems, especially in areas in the Bay Area where it could take 180 days to get permits for things. So depending upon what you want to do, building an ADU could be more challenging in areas where it takes more time to get things done. But if it's improvements to fix up the roof, the kitchen, the bathrooms, probably not so bad. Probably not as challenging. You might be able to do this. Now, the reverse exchange fees are similar to the build to suit improvement exchange fees are the same as the reverse exchange fees. So, in my opinion, if you're not getting at least $35,000 to $40,000 worth of improvements, don't do it. The fees are too much. Just take the boot money and do the improvements after the fact. It just isn't worth it. So the improvements, in my opinion, you got to be north of 40,000, and you got to make sure that these improvements can be done within the 180-day time frame. I will tell you this, usually not in California, but in a lot of other states, we've built homes from the ground up. For farmers, we've built barns, irrigation systems, fences. For commercial properties, we built a $4 million, or I think it was $5 million staircase on a industrial office building mix. I didn't know they cost that much, but apparently they cost a lot, and you can get things done. In the Bay Area, we've done many improvement exchanges as well. So I think the best thing to do is have the conversation with me. And sometimes people doing the exchanges are general contractors, and they can push things along faster, where they have the contact or somebody in their family is one. There are ways to expedite, but you have to keep those time frames in mind, keep the fees in mind. And if there is a loan on the improvement exchange, the lender is going to have to be okay with the LLC going on title at the close. So keep that in mind. Reverse and improvement exchanges are awesome. Pretty easy if it's all cash. It can be more challenging if there is a loan. And usually conventional lenders on residential property, well, actually First Republic used to do it for their special clients, but Coco, I don't think First Republic's around anymore, right?
Probably not.
No, they're gone. They've been absorbed by Chase. So those preferential guidelines no longer exist. So more than likely you'll have to go either private money, or hopefully the seller will carry if you're going to get financing in one of these more complicated type of exchanges.
Is permit required for improvement exchange?
We don't care.
Uh-huh.
I get all kinds of questions on the improvement exchanges. Do you guys check for permits? Do you guys check if the work is done? Can you pay my contractor before the work is done? Okay, first off, don't ever do that. Don't pay the contractor before they do their work. We get these questions. If we're invoiced, we're going to pay. And I'm not the exchange police going out there to check on things being done. What have people done? I don't know, Coco, because I've never gone out there to check. What permits have they had in place? I don't know that either. Those are very good questions, but again, we're not the exchange police. What we do know is that improvements don't qualify, but the improvement exchange could be a way around that to get it done as long as you complete them within the 180-day time frame. It's very popular, especially with the craze for ADUs. A lot of people want to put ADUs on the properties that they're buying. One other thing I'd like to add about the improvement exchange so that people don't start asking this question. Many of our investors say, oh, so then I can go build on the bare land that I already own. No, that would be very difficult to do. In 2004, they put a revenue procedure where you can't build on land that you already own. There are some tricky, aggressive maneuvers to kind of get that done. but I don't recommend it. You can't just say, oh, well, I sold this investment property. I have an extra 200,000. I already bought something else. Can we build an ADU on my primary residence and I will rent that ADU out? Doesn't work. Again, can't build on property you already own. In a scenario like that, it would never work. So usually about 90% of the time, an improvement exchange is used on the property, either bare land or an existing property that is being purchased, not on something that you already own.
That makes sense. Does the 45-day window still apply for the improvement exchange?
Yes. So you have to identify the exact improvements that you're going to complete within the 45-day window. And you have to be as specific as possible. You can't just say build house. That is not going to work unless it's the entire completion of the property, and that's unlikely. So, keep in mind, let's say the target price was, I don't know, 600,000 and the land was worth 400,000 for what I was buying. And the property is going to be $500,000. Well, my target price is only 6. So I only have to do 200,000 worth of improvements. I don't have to complete the project. I have to hit my target price. So you don't have to completely rehab the property or completely build the property. You have to get to your target price. And sometimes that's just putting the foundation down. A lot of tax advisors are good with using the money to pay for soft costs. If you don't know what soft costs are, they're like the permits and architectural fees, which could become quite pricey. And if you could use exchange proceeds to pay for that, that would be pretty awesome for a lot of people in this scenario.
That makes sense. Yeah. So the 45-day and the 180 days apply to pretty much everything except for the reverse exchange. Only the 180-day applies.
So 45 does as well for the reverse exchange. So you do have to identify.
What does that kick in?
So in a reverse exchange, like we mentioned earlier, you buy first and sell second, but you have to identify what you're selling. And most people know what they're selling, but some people have a lot of property. So you do. And we ask for it up front. We don't wait till like day 44, like, what are you going to sell? We will ask for that up front so that they identify and get that out of the way. And, maybe you do have 3 properties or 5 properties or whatever. You have to decide between those properties what you're going to identify as the one being sold. So in a reverse exchange, it still does apply. From the close of the purchase, you have 45 days to identify what you're going to sell and 180 days total to close on it.
Or can you sell multiple to get one?
Yes, you can. Now, many people sell multiple to get one in a reverse exchange, but sometimes the entity that owns the properties are different. It's like maybe I have one in my corporation and one in my name. Those would be separate reverse exchanges because they're different taxpayers.
All different names.
So,
gotcha.
yeah. So when the taxpayer is different, they would be separate reverse exchanges. So on the buy, you would have 2 separate LLCs, one allocated to the corporation property, one allocated to the individual property. So depending upon what's going on with the multiple properties being sold would determine how that reverse exchange was going to work. And let's say we sold San Jose for 1.5 and we bought the replacement property for $1 million in a reverse exchange. We still have 500,000 to spend. So the way it would work is set up LLC, close escrow on purchase property for 1 million, close escrow on San Jose for 1.5, get the $1 million back, but 500,000 would go into the 1031 exchange account. And now you have a new forward exchange, not with a target price of 1.5, but a target price of 500,000. Because either you complete that part or you'll pay tax on that part. So you could do both. In some scenarios, you're doing both the reverse and a forward if the reverse exchange first property is of less value than your target.
That makes a lot of sense. What if you sell multiple properties but under the same name? So where does that 180 days start to count?
So that is a very common strategy where you're looking to consolidate your real estate portfolio. Maybe I have 10 properties and I just hate being a landlord and I want to get rid of them and I'd like to buy one big commercial property. Well, you can consolidate. 10 would be a large order because the way it would work, and let's just say hypothetically, it's the same person on title, not a different entity, same entity on title to all 10 properties. Well, the 45-day window to identify what you're going to buy starts when the first one closes. So you have to have all 10 closed before the purchase, and ideally all 10 closed within the 45-day window. You would have to pull some magic, Coco, to get all those properties sold. Now, if you price them right, you probably could get a bunch of those sold if they're in the right area, and you could combine them to buy that replacement property. So it is possible, but the more that you're selling to combine could become more challenging.
But that's the forward exchange. So if
That's
you
the
sell
forward
multiple,
exchange.
yeah,
The same
the
thing for a
first one.
reverse exchange. Reverse would be easier. If I were to sell 10 properties to buy one, I would recommend the reverse, because I know in 180 days I could probably sell all 10, and I've already bought my replacement property. So you have both. You have the forward, which is very challenging when you sell that many, and the reverse, which I think is less challenging, because then you would have the opportunity to buy first, and you'd have 180 days to sell all 10. And you and I both know that if those are vacant properties in the right area, they'll sell all of them in 180 days.
But for the fees, you mentioned $1,000 for
For
selling
a regular 1031 exchange, in that example, $1,000 for the first property sold, $250 for every other property. So each of the other 9 would be $250, and the purchase would be $250. In a reverse exchange like that, each additional property that was being sold would be $250 as well. So the
and the 6,000-7,000 is the first one.
Is the first one bought and sold. Any additional property being sold would be in another $250 for the reverse and the forward.
Okay. So when you say 250 for additional, could be additional sold or additional bought, right?
Yeah,
Either.
yeah,
Okay.
that's correct.
All right.
And look at that. We're past 6:45.
Okay, and it's a very quiet crowd today. Last week we had so many questions bumming at us. So anybody has any questions, it's your time, because this is the second week that we're inviting James back and to get all those questions answered. Anyone has questions, I think it's time to speak up, and before we say goodbye to James.
You can also raise your hand.
Yeah, you can also raise your hand. Yeah.
There are so many different things about the 1031 exchange that we did not even touch base on. These are just basic explanations of some of the different exchanges that exist. But within a 1031 exchange, there are so many different things that you can or can't do. You can ask me a question on anything 1031 related. Speak now or forever hold your peace, or just
I'm sure I can get hold of you if you don't.
They can get a hold of us later, but speak now or forever hold your peace for tonight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well,
it seems very complicated, but I think the best thing to do is just let the expert do the things.
I think, Paula, that's a great point. And that's not just for the 1031 exchange. I think that's for anything. I talk to so many people that go on the internet and talk to me and give me incorrect information. That's not just for 1031s. That's for anything related to a craft that you're not an expert in. And when it comes to real estate transaction, there's so many different people involved: realtor, lender, appraiser, inspector, any of the craftsmen trying to do work on the property or improve the property, 1031 exchange specialist, tax advisor, real estate attorney. I think that everybody should take out their smartphone right now and put 1031 James in there and put my phone number, email address, and contact me when needed. You won't remember James, but you will remember 1031. And I think you should do that for all of the different trades that you associate yourself with. Do not go on the internet to get answers, because sometimes those answers are wrong.
The biggest misconception was that you have to buy equal or more
all the time
in that value. Otherwise, they actually disqualify the 1031.
That's just one of the biggest misconceptions. There's a few out there. That's a very popular one. Where to find reliable information about the 1031 exchange? Go to our website, www.ipx1031.com. There are PDFs on everything that I spoke about today and much more. If you want more in-depth information like private letter rulings, revenue procedure, case law, I do have that as well. It's not all on the website. I can give you a plethora of information regarding 1031 exchange. All you have to do is reach out. And don't say, send me everything. That will blow up your computer. Get a specific topic that you want information on. It could be a bunch. And just say, send me what you have on these topics, and I'm more than happy to do that.
And I'm leaving my email and my phone number there. So anybody who has a question about real estate or the market, or wish to reach James through me, you can contact me as well. Yeah. So if no other questions, thank you very much, James, for sharing your valuable knowledge here with us.
And I just put my email address and my phone number in the chat as well. If you don't call Coco, call me directly or text me or email me, and we're both happy to help you with your real estate transaction. Me only for investment property, Coco for everything.
I think we also
Thank
have a
you.
question at the Q&A section, like how do you compare the advantages and disadvantages of 1031 exchange and DST?
Well, the DST is part of a 1031 exchange. So what you're asking me is, what do you think about the exit strategies of a 1031 exchange, pros and cons of the DST? First off, the Delaware Statutory Trust is a replacement property exit strategy for someone that is tired of being a landlord. It is a way of owning a fractional interest in a large commercial institutional asset. So for somebody who's been a landlord for a long time, or just doesn't want to do with the day-to-day hassles of owning real estate, maintaining real estate, doing anything with real estate except the check, then a Delaware statutory trust could be an exit strategy that is perfect for you, because basically you will own a small interest in a large property, whether it's a 450 unit apartment complex that was just completed a couple of years ago or last year, or, not too long ago, so there isn't much maintenance, or a large industrial building where maybe your tenant is Amazon or FedEx, or a bunch of self-storage facilities, or maybe office building where the tenant is very reliable, like a government tenant or a medical office or something like that. I think for the big advantage of the Delaware Statutory Trust is they are very conservative investments, at least the ones I would consider. There are other ones I wouldn't consider, just because through COVID, you kind of found out what is more risky than others. But it gives you the opportunity to go into a very conservative investment with consistent cash flow and no property management responsibility at all. I mean, nothing. Even in triple net properties, you have it, but the DST does not provide that. I think it is perfect for the person that is looking to do something like that. I think it's also perfect for the person that is an empty nester in a 1031 exchange, like we mentioned earlier. You have to use all the cash and replace all the debt. Retirees can't qualify for loans quite often because they're no longer working. The DST provider provides their own financing that doesn't show up on your books. So it's a great way to get that debt component done, get into an asset that is completely passive, and get your consistent cash flow monthly or quarterly, whatever you determine up front. Those are the big pros, right? I don't have any responsibility. I get paid each month. I am a very happy camper. Now, the cons of the Delaware Statutory Trust. Well, the con of any real estate investment is there's always risk. To me, the least risk adverse, I would imagine, would be multifamily, self-storage, and industrial property. Student housing, office, and other ones, there's risk. Okay, that's one, but that's for every real estate investment. I think the big disadvantage of the DST is you're stuck in the DST usually for about 5 to 7 years. So if you were looking to buy something and then refinance and take money out, you're not doing that. If you're looking to sell it when you want to sell it, you're not doing that either. It is not for the person that wants control. If you're the kind of person that likes to be a landlord and check on the properties and deal with tenants, you should not be in a Delaware statutory trust at all. So it is very clear to me from the start when I talk to somebody, when they say, look, I'm just tired of being a landlord. I don't want to pay taxes, and I just want to get paid each month, and I want something safe. To me, that screams Delaware statutory trust. But for the person that says, I really don't know what I want to do, I want to park it somewhere, I'd like to get cash flow, I may need to sell it in the near future, take money out, you shouldn't even consider the Delaware statutory trust. And if it's somebody who likes to really manage real estate, and there are people out there that are like that and have control over the asset, it's not for you either. I can give more information on the Delaware Statutory Trust and the UPREIT 721, which is very popular through the DST. It's where you go from a DST and get absorbed into a REIT for people that are interested in that. We didn't touch on that today. Again, this is for the passive individual. I'll tell you this, the average age of somebody going into a Delaware Statutory Trust is in the 60s usually. It could be a lot younger for somebody that's been a landlord for a long time, but usually at that point, empty nesters want safe investments and no longer want active management, and DST is perfect for them.
James didn't just say that DST is the last stop, so meaning that you can't no longer.
Oh, no, the DST is not the last stop. So after 5 to 7 years, they will sell. That's the average
But
time
it
frame.
has to be 5 to 7 years later. You cannot.
Yes, you can't determine when. Sometimes it's sooner, like when Amazon bought something, or when one DST you bought into was an Amazon offering. Amazon wanted to buy the building 2 years later, so they got out much quicker with huge profits. But you can't count on something like that happening. So it's usually 5 to 7 years. At that point, when they sell, you can do another 1031 exchange. You can cash out. If you do another 1031 exchange, you don't have to go back into a DST. You can, most people do. You can go back into traditional real estate. It's truly up to the investor.
Okay, got it. Okay, but for people who actually like to have something tangible.
Tangible, yeah. I'd say about 25% of our clients go into the DST, and it's people that usually no longer want to deal with tenants.
Yeah, but for somebody who wants tangible assets, then
tangible assets, you call Coco.
Yeah.
And I'd say that's about 75% of our clientele.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for Coco and James for such a wonderful presentation. So we really learned a lot. So, and if you have any questions about 1031 exchange, just call the expert. So James 415-640-0794. And if you like tangible, and just call Coco at 488-829-6053. And I think it takes about 10,000 hours to become expert. So I don't think like if you're just an investor, you shouldn't be investing that much hours to become expert in the 1031 exchange. You just go ask for and leverage the power of the experts. And then
biggest investors that we have, Paula, that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, still rely on us for all their answers and their team. And that's why they own that much and are that wealthy, because they have a team doing what their specialty is.
Yeah, I think the rules change as well. So we don't want to risk on that as well, you know. So we wanted to really hear the most updates, you know, most recent updates and make sure we're doing the right thing. So definitely. So I always go to James when I have a 1031 exchange question, even though I actually knew the answer, but I'm so afraid of giving the wrong advice. I said, well, why don't you call James?
It's the best thing to do. You don't want to give tax and legal advice. That's my job.
Right. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
Have a great evening. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye.
So here we're gonna be upcoming classes. So on Friday, tomorrow actually is our stock. If you are interested in stock investment, just come to tomorrow's class. And on Saturday, we're looking for retirement paradise. So discover retirement destinations. So this coming Saturday, it will be Sarasota of Florida. And then on Tuesday is our continuing CPA. So your tax advice and also classes. And we also at 6:45, we actually invited the violin. So violin maker, like very popular violin maker, Scott Tall. And he is also a poet, and he is also an author of a few books to come to an NZ classroom, talk about his experience and his life, and also about how he wrote this newly published book. So this is like coming Tuesday at 6:45, and then on April 18, so next Thursday, so we invited Angel to give us a speech on how to master the art of personalized selling. So if you are in the selling and any sort of selling, just come to next Thursday's class. And then all the classes, you can just go to my9fr.com and you can just click. So very easy to get on air and online. So that's how technology can make the life much easier. So thank you so much for participating in NZ Classroom, and we are very happy and we are really grateful and you are here to share the knowledge with all of us. Thank you so much, and so we'll see you next time. Okay. Everybody have a good night. Get some music.